Hi, I'm Stephen O'Grady. I'm the co-founder of RedMonk, and today I'm here with Robert Reeves from Liquibase. Robert, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Robert Reeves. I'm CTO of Liquibase, and I'm a very lazy and impatient person. So that's why I like helping people make tools to help other people be lazy and impatient.
That seems pretty fair. And speaking of lazy and impatient tools, the subject we're here to talk about today, I think, is one that, we at RedMonk have been talking about for a long, long time. And, we've had conversations with Liquibase and conversations with many other, folks in the industry, which is essentially, when you boil it down, it comes down to the fact that we have learned a lot about, how to develop software at high rates of speed, how to deal with infrastructure, how to deal with code. And, there are a lot of concepts therein that have been applied. We have any number of different sort of methodologies, there are terms to apply here, DevOps probably sort of being the most obvious one. So the sort of, the long and the short of it is that, we have dramatically transformed the way that we develop software, over the past, sort of a couple of years at least. And it looks nothing like it did, way back in the day when I developed software myself. And then you look at the database world and it's not that way, right? We have a world in which, it is still, so many of the processes, so many of the way that, folks are dealing with their databases, sort of at the enterprise look a lot like they used to, right? So the question, from our perspective, and, this is one I'm interested to hear your take on, Robert, is okay, so, we have tools like a Terraform, for managing our infrastructure. Why don't we have that for databases? Or, do we have that for databases?
Yeah, it's this reminds me the fact that some people are very advanced in how they build and deliver software, and right. Other people are not in the same company. It reminds me of the William Gibson quote, "The future's already here. It's just not evenly distributed."
Yep.
So there are some people in an organization that are very comfortable with doing a check-in, and there's a build. And if certain things happen, then that software is automatically released. And of course, we're looking at the software, making sure that it doesn't do anything naughty. And if it does, we roll it back. Right. We are not comfortable yet on the whole with the database. All right. So back in the day when we released, we had one major release a year and then a kind of, minor release a year. We wanted the world's most advanced computer to review these scripts and to make sure this all worked. And we needed a lot of people because, as we know, the anti-DevOps pattern, which is let's have lots of change, that makes lots of instability. So we need lots of people to look at it. Now we're doing a little bit of change here and there, bite-sized change. All right.
Right.
Morsel. The rate of change is going up for the application, and it's crushing our database professionals because we're still relying on a manual process. So, why haven't we done it? I think we are. And I think that's what we do at Liquibase. I think, and of course, my marketing team hates when I use this analogy, using a trademark term to describe our stuff. But that's why I believe that it is very similar to Terraform, but for databases, to be able to add a column to that table, not set up the database, but change the schema so the application will run.
Yeah. So that, that always comes down to when we have this conversation, right? One of the things that we try to talk to folks on the enterprise side about is, sort of the benefits and costs, if you will, right? So in other words, the benefits to this approach are typically pretty clear, right? In that, from our perspective, the number one thing that we hear every enterprise want today is they want to go fast, right? They have been, come from a world where, look, if I dropped, sort of code, once a quarter, I was doing great. And that's just not the world that any of us live in these days, because if you're doing that, there's somebody next to you, either, sort of a longtime incumbent or more likely some digital native that is shipping daily, right? So you're going to fall behind. So, if you can obviously have, sort of a better process for managing your databases, you are allowed to move more quickly. As any application developer who's had to wait on DBAs for sort of database provisioning, database, anything related to database management is aware of, right? So, okay, fine. On the one hand, I can sort of go that route. The flip side to this is that, what are the costs, essentially of not taking this approach? And as I said, I think the biggest one for me is velocity, in the sense that you were just sort of hidebound to sort of more constrained methodologies, absent this kind of tooling, absent this kind of process. And, as I said, sort of at the outset, it's always seemed strange to me that organizations, have made so many radical changes to the way they develop software and haven't applied them to their database. So, yeah, I think the advantages, sort of are essentially two sides of the same coin, in that you move more quickly if you do it. And if you don't move as quickly, then, you're going to have issues, right? So I don't know, from my perspective, that's essentially what we're talking about with enterprises. But, from your standpoint, having conversations with folks in the industry, partners, are you seeing validation for this? Because like I said, we've been talking about it a long time, years at this point, maybe 5 or 6. So what are you hearing from your partners, the folks that you're seeing, are they bought into this? Is it still early? Where would you characterize our place in the spectrum at this point?
There are folks that are adopting this and are all in. Okay. And then there are people that make the database and they're all in. All right. Okay. So there's two groups here. All right. So there's the person that we're talking about getting out more releases. All right. What we would consider, a customer, you all consider a client. So I'm going to give an example here of a company that invested in DevOps across all parts of the stack. All right. And so that's Bank of America. All right. Okay. And where you can see the result, the positive, the pro that happened was with the PPP program, payroll protection program. So I guess it's like PIN number. You just drop, it's the PPP.
Right.
And so they made a commitment as an organization. They said, look, we're going to support this. All right. And they decided, yes, we are going to be the first out the gate to support this with online applications. And they were. Now, for those of you that don't know, with this program, there is a 1% origination fee that you get. So you loan out, $1 million, you get 1% of that. 10 million, 100 million, a billion. All right.
Right.
And so they decided that they were going to support this and that they were going to be the first ones out. They were. Now, there are other competitors of theirs that lagged. And there was a finite amount of money in this program. And by the time they were ready to support it, it was gone. All right. And Bank of America won. So they made a decision as an org. We are going to support the people that need help. And we're going to get this program out. And we're going to do it. So we made a decision. We're going to enact the decision. And the reason why they were able to enact it was because they've been investing in this, not just the database, but everything in their stack. And those are the results. So those are the pros. So you were talking about competitors. This is an example of, if you're a competitor of a company like Bank of America, you should be very concerned. All right. Now, what we're seeing from the database vendors is that they are working on adding support to Liquibase to help out their database. So recently we saw this with our friends at Google Spanner. So Liquibase has an extension architecture. And although all databases are very similar, they're also all very different. Okay, so there are packages and
Spanner in particular.
Yes. And but at the end of the day, it's a database. You persist stuff there. Okay. Yeah. Some databases, it's eventually correct. Some, it's right there. It's immediately correct. They're all unique and special. And so that's why we have the extension architecture. One, just to be able to connect to the database, and two, do the things that the database needs. So, Oracle extension is going to be a little different than the Mongo extension, than the Google Spanner extension. Right. And so our friends at Google, they went ahead and built a Liquibase extension, and they're releasing it for Google Spanner.
Nice. Okay.
Wow, that's really cool. We also saw last year, somebody contacted us and said, hey, do y'all want an extension for Mongo? I said, sure. They said, yeah, we've been working on this over at MasterCard, and here it is. So if you go to the Liquibase GitHub repo and you look for the MongoDB extension, you're going to see the MasterCard copyright all over the source code for that. And so it's not just the vendors that are doing this, it's also the customers. Yeah. And so we're seeing this time and time again. Our friends at AWS Redshift did a lot of work with us recently. And the same team that worked on MongoDB is now working on Azure Cosmos DB, and that's released now. So we're seeing this from customers, your clients, our customers, but we're also seeing it from the database vendors as well. So I do think it is coming together right now. Only time will tell, though.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Because as I said, it's something we, as analysts, we talked about as an academic concept, sort of a number of years ago. And, one of the things we like to say at RedMonk is that we can tell you what's going to happen. We just can't tell you when. And I think in this case, that certainly seems to be the case. So we've gone from academic concept to, okay, obviously we have a vendor that specializes it in Liquibase, but also, both buyers, the MasterCards and so forth of the world building this stuff out on their own, as well as vendors, sort of AWS, Google, et cetera, going the same route and seeing the same benefits. So, all right, well, I'm gonna tentatively chalk this one up as an accurate prediction, given that I never made any time frame, I never attached the time frame to it, so I think we're good. But anyway, this has been great. It's great to chat, Robert, and I look forward to the next time.
Thanks for having me.